Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. Yes, I'm back. I'm so excited to be sitting down here today, ready to review a movie for you guys, and especially this one, because I just watched Monkey Man. Let's talk about it. So Monkey Man is the directorial debut of none other than Dev Patel, the extremely talented British Indian actor who has been working in the industry for over 2 decades at this point, I believe. And even though he has had some really impressive, brilliant roles in films throughout his career, unfortunately he hasn't really managed to reach the level of stardom and success and leading man status that someone of his caliber deserves, and there's certain reasons for that which are pretty obvious, but it's a really huge shame. But I'm so glad that he didn't let this bring him down, and he instead took matters into his own hands by not only writing, not only producing, but also directing and starring in his directorial debut in the form of this action-packed thriller film that was really bombastic and an incredible way to start his directing career. So as I said, Monkey Man has Dev Patel's fingerprints all over it, and you could really tell that this was his passion project. This was his baby, not just from the storyline itself, which takes place in India, in Mumbai specifically, I believe, which obviously taps into his own heritage, but also in the way that the film is actualized, heavy on the action, but in the way that the film is filmed, the camera techniques, the aesthetic here. You also have the choreography of the action sequences, which we'll tap into in a second. But this movie is rated 18, and it is not a light 18, okay? This movie is absolutely brutal. It is bloodthirsty. It is dripping in hemoglobin. And so you have to have a very specific vision to bring this kind of story to life. And so you can really tell that this is a film that Dev Patel wanted to give his all to. And thankfully, I'm sitting here saying that it was absolutely worth it. It's a brilliant action thriller movie. And like I said, an incredible start to a directing career for this actor. So before we dive into more of my thoughts on Monkey Man, as per usual, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and make sure you turn on your notifications so that you can be told when I upload next. I promise there isn't usually as much of a gap between uploads, but I decided to take a little short break for the sake of ramping up for the summer season, let's say. Bringing up that energy, because the other releases lately have not been capturing my imagination, if I'm being honest. I've been checking bits and bobs out, but nothing has really got me excited, got me revved up until this weekend, where we have a couple of projects that have. And so be sure to subscribe to check out further reviews coming up. So Monkey Man is centered on Dev Patel's character, who is inconspicuously named Bobby, after a brand of bleach that he happens to glance upon during the film. We don't really know his real name, but he is referred to as Bobby or Monkey Man. And he was born and raised in India with his mother, but he had a very turbulent childhood when this big property developer decided to take over their land and threw out all of the natives of that land so that he could profit off of the land and create this kind of cult for which he built this entire political and capitalistic empire from. And he was the one that tore away Bobby and his mother from their home, but his mother stood firm and she refused to be intimidated by these evil people, and in return for that she was beaten brutally, she was tortured, and ultimately she was set alight right in front of Bobby's young eyes. And since then he was understanding understandably completely traumatized, and his young childhood and teenagehood was really, really difficult. He ends up becoming this kind of underground fighter using the moniker Monkey Man, where he wears this mask, and he's actually a villain as part of this kind of storyline that's happening in the underground fighting scene. And so you have these other fighters that are favored by the crowd and the organizer kind of beating the hell out of him. Oh my goodness, they get to beat on him, they get to torture him, and it's all part of the show, it's all part of the game, and ultimately that's how he gets the pennies that he needs in order to survive. But he has so much anger in him. He has anger for himself and for his mother, and also for all of the people in his neighborhood that were forcefully driven out of their homes for the sake of this capitalistic imperialistic dog who somewhat mirrors a real life Indian politician. Listen, there are some strong political, not even undertones, actually overtones in this film, which makes it even more exciting and adds an extra layer of commentary there. But as a result of all of this trauma, Bobby just has so much anger in him, and he seeks revenge against the people that destroyed his home and killed his mother. And he ultimately gets the opportunity when he manages to infiltrate the organization and quickly work his way up to become someone who serves recreational substances in the VIP room where a lot of the top bosses in the crooked organization led by the quasi-religious leader tend to frequent. And there's a lot of horrible criminal activity going on in this circle, just showing just how corrupt everything is. But Bobby uses this as an opportunity to get to especially the police captain who killed and tortured his mother right before his young eyes. And if that wasn't already enough, where you have an incredible backstory, a compelling revenge tale, but then also some political, again, overtones just overlaying the entire storyline. If that wasn't enough, you also have this added layer of character development for this protagonist, because there are characters that come into his life throughout the film that make him realize that his internalized anger could be put to better use by fighting for a larger cause that is bigger than just himself and his mother. And I thought that was a really brilliant kind of addition to the storyline, and like I said, to the character's arc and journey throughout this film, because we've seen plenty of revenge tales before. We've got the Equalizers, we've got the Takens, we've got the John Wicks, which is made reference to in this film. But what I really enjoyed about this in particular is, of course, the socio-political commentary, especially in a different context to what I'm used to, with the political situation in India being explored through this somewhat fictional political leader. But I also really enjoyed the fact that about halfway through the film, the character encounters some people who are particularly disenfranchised, just like his own people were from his village. But this time around, we're dealing with these trans women who are particularly disenfranchised, and they have been targeted and brutalized and abused in society, especially with the poisoning and brainwashing that this toxic political party has been doing. And so the fact that he comes into contact with this community that is particularly downtrodden, and he realizes that he has been looking far too inward in himself, and perhaps, you know, even though he still has these issues, even though his trauma isn't magically fixed or anything like that, but perhaps he could best use his skill set, his anger, his trauma, and his desire for vengeance in order to help others, to help a wider community which has also been victimized by this corrupted political party. But to be honest, as compelling enough as the story was, I would say the main draw of this film is definitely in the execution on screen. It's definitely in the action sequences and the cinematography, stylizations, just everything about the execution was so damn impressive. Like I said before, I think Dev Patel poured his heart and soul into this film. He was directing like he didn't know if he was ever going to direct again. And considering the fact that Netflix of all people ended up passing on this film, this junk that I've been watching on Netflix, for them to have the audacity to be like, nah, to Dev Patel, okay? But considering the fact that that actually happened, I think it makes sense that Dev Patel was like, listen, I have one shot, I've got to make it work. You only got one shot, do not miss your chance to blow. This opportunity comes once in a lifetime, you better. But he poured his heart and soul into the directing, into the writing, but especially into his performance and carrying out the choreography. My man broke bones, okay? He lost a tooth, he lost a finger, he lost a toe. Like, it was madness for him, but you could tell that he wanted this to succeed so much, even during the press tour and in Sundance, where he got a standing ovation. Like, this is someone who has been working in the industry for so long. He's so freaking talented, but because of, we know why, because of certain factors out of his control, he hasn't managed to break that barrier into leading man status. And here he had the chance to take ownership of this project, and he did not waste that chance in the slightest. And that is what is awe-inspiring about this project, as well as the fact that the execution is excellent. Like, genuinely, the film is bombastic. The action sequences are inventive, especially the kitchen sequence. Oh, I have never considered all these different types of ways to kill people in a kitchen, but Dev Patel did. Dev Patel managed to find a way to kill people in 500 different ways in a kitchen, and like, I love that for him. I thought the choreography was really brilliant. I know that he said that he was inspired not by John Wick, thank you very much, although he does get a name drop in this film, but actually by a bunch of Asian cinema. And I can kind of tell, even though I don't watch a lot of these like Asian action filled movies, I can tell that it's a different brand to what we usually see from Hollywood, because it's more rough and ready and emphasis on the rough. Emphasis on the rough. And as someone who really likes hand-to-hand combat, as I've often said on this channel, I had to admit that this was kind of my limit. Like, for me, oftentimes I found myself covering my eyes. I was watching it like, oh. And the whole time it was crazy. But like I said, super inventive, and I love the fact that he took inspiration from that kind of cinema, because it felt really refreshing to those of us who are used to seeing the usual Hollywood fare. Although, to be fair, I do think there was some inspiration from John Wick, even if it was unintentional, Dev, okay? But I think the cinematography, the stylization, the use of lights and music, it was definitely giving John Wick. I'm not saying that John Wick is the first or last film to do that kind of thing, but it is the franchise that has routinely done it best, at least from Hollywood. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they took a couple of cues from that franchise and brought it to this film set in India and inspired largely by Asian cinema. Now, if I did have a small critique, I think at times the film was a bit much. Like, there was a lot going on, and it did kind of feel like they were throwing everything in, including the kitchen sink. But honestly, I find that a bit endearing, because like I said, I could tell that this was a passion project for Dev Patel and everyone involved. Like, they really cared about what they were doing here. They poured their heart and soul into it, so I don't hold it against them too much. But as a viewer, I did think that there were times where it was overstimulating, and I do think that even in action-packed thrillers like this, it's important to have moments of calm and dialogue and reflection, just so you have a contrast against the fast-paced action sequences, the super brutal violence, choreography, the blood-filled scenes, you know, just so you have a little bit of contrast between the two, which I think presents a better balance as a viewer, because otherwise you're just kind of overstimulated and it just kind of washes over you, which sometimes happens to me in John Wick films as well, by the way. But if everything is just washing over you, even if you have brilliant choreography, if it's just back-to-back scenes of flying limbs and blood splurts and punches and kicks and and all sorts all the time, then it can get a bit, I don't know, like fatiguing a little bit, or the impact is kind of lost because it's all that you've been seeing for, you know, more than 20 minutes. And as I mentioned before, my other critique would be that the story isn't the most like new innovative thing that we've never seen before. This is the kind of storyline that we've seen done many times, but as I said, it's done pretty well here, and it's a great vessel for those really impactful action sequences that Dev Patel directed the hell out of. And so guys, with all of that being said, I'm going to be giving Monkey Man a 7.5 out of 10. So that's it from me. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on Monkey Man, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of this movie down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch your videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.